We've paid quite a lot of attention recently in South Africa on food safety. We know of scores of children sadly dying as a result of consuming food that was, clearly not safe to consume. And what transpired from that is that there were a whole lot of Sydney spaza shops and other businesses that are populated in the employ by people who should not be employed in South Africa. That's the one big issue. The other bigger issue, of course, being around basic conditions of employment. The Minister of Employment and Labour, Minister Nomakosazana Meth, announcing a mass recruitment drive recently at the NEDLAG annual labour school, saying that 10,000 recruits would be sourced during the first intake in 2025, with another 10,000 joining in 2026. She said these inspections are to ensure that employees are correctly paid, the conditions of employment are as per the Basic Conditions of Employment Act, and where we have found non-compliance, we have enforced the law with all might. Joining me is the General Secretary of Fedusa, that's Riefdah Ajam. Riefdah, you welcome the employment opportunities of 10,000 new recruits in 2025, but you have some concerns by this announcement by the minister. What are those concerns? Good morning.
Absolutely. Good morning, and thank you for the opportunity. Whilst this is considered as a positive step, in particular with strengthening compliance of labour laws, where the vulnerable and low-skilled workers are most at risk in terms of exploitation, what remains our concern at this stage is that there seems to be an over-reliance by government on internship programs. Whilst this is an intake of 10,000 interns, and I must place the emphasis on that word interns for this financial year and the next. What happens now is that this over-reliance to fill critical roles within the public service could then at a later stage place the Department of Employment and Labour in a precarious position because, number one, we are looking at these internships becoming more and more of a substitute and a displacement for permanent workers. And at a later stage, what you are going to find is that this over-reliance to address systemic gaps risks creating an unstable and unsustainable inspectorate, potentially undermining the department's long-term ability to safeguard workers' rights.
Some would say rather have the 10,000 recruits and interns carrying out the work than have clearly an underwhelming number of inspectors at the moment who are not carrying out the work.
No, I agree with you completely, but what we are saying is that at the end of the day, this is a program that is intended to increase the levels of compliance. We need to ensure that the cohort of interns are trained, they are skilled, and that they become attractive to the workplace. As a result of a report that was released last year, an audit report as well, we are finding that there are compromises in the system. And even though there are allocations of inspectors, it is just not enough to sustain the need out in the market. These are once again placing an emphasis on interns that have to be trained, that have to go through the mill, and we are certainly hoping that they will be absorbed by virtue of a program from the department. But the need is just too great. And what we need right now is for a sustainable plan from the department to ensure that there's education and training on a consistent basis and that there's collaboration between the partners, i.e. government, business and labour, to ensure that there are greater levels of compliance insofar as the inspectors, number one, and number two, the overall framework.
How many inspectors do we know currently exist in South Africa, Riefdah? We know it's a critical role. Obviously, I imagine many of the challenging stories we've reported on in the last year or two would have not come to fruition or realization had there been adequately trained inspectors doing the work that they need to do. What numbers are we sitting at the moment? Do you know?
I cannot give you an accurate figure. I will gladly get back to you on that total. But let me just outline the process. About 3 years ago, the former minister, Tula Nesi, had appointed 500 additional inspectors. And this was still not enough to address the challenges in the South African labour market. In terms of the ILO standards, we are working in the right direction. But when you take a look at the levels of non-compliance, once again, it places us on a back foot in terms of where we need to be. And I just want to draw your attention, Africa, to the fact that in 2020, during the heart of COVID, we saw the gravest levels of non-compliance in terms of occupational health and safety, in terms of what should be, but what was direly lacking in the workplaces, not just in terms of health and safety, but also then identifying the fact that statutory deductions such as UIF were made, but unfortunately those contributions were not paid over by the employers to the respective funds. So the number out there at the stage, which I will certainly get back to you on, is just not enough to be able to address the requirements of the market. So with the cohort now, it's certainly welcomed, but we are demanding that stringent training takes place to ensure that the learners are able to deal with the challenges that we are seeing in the labour market.
Couldn't agree more, Riefdah. Thank you very much for your time this morning. Riefdah Ajam is the General Secretary of Fedusa, while welcoming the announcement by the Minister of Employment of Labour of those 10,000 recruits in 2025, with a further 10,000 joining in 2026. There are some concerns that we continue to rely on interns for, quite frankly, critical work that needs to be done by government.